then the little bunny went home. He had had a long day. He walked into his tiny little furnished rabbit hole and talked to his wife. "Honey, I'm home," he said. "How was work?" "Well, it was quite delightful. I got promoted." "Oh, that's so wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you. You're just so deserving of this promotion." And then the rabbit sat down in his comfiest chair, in his softest, comfiest clothes, and said, "Honey, I think I want to listen to the Dr. Snedeker podcast." She frowned. "You know how I feel about those musician types." She had been burned in the past by a musician who wanted to not be interrupted during his set to play Happy Birthday at an Applebee's. Did Applebee's provide the live music? Probably not. "Well, honey, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to play an episode of the Dr. Snedeker podcast. I believe he's going to talk in a softer manner than last week." And that's exactly what he did. Hello. I'm much more calm now than last week's episode. You might be saying, "But Dutcher, you're in the same shirt. Why is that?" Well, I could do a very Hollywood thing and be like, "Well, I own multiple shirts." But I think most people who watch content now know that it's filmed in advance and scheduled. It could be 2 days in advance. It could be a week in advance. It could be 2 weeks in advance. I am just trying to free up more time because I have some things that I have to learn and practice for this month. So I appreciate you enjoying. I'm assuming you're going to. I appreciate that you're enjoying the podcast. This week's episode's a little bit more subdued. If you want to listen to last week's episode, it's episode 30, so you can find it on whatever platform directly below you, in the recommended, maybe on YouTube. I don't know. I still have to figure all that out. But hello, I am here to talk about... What do I want to talk about today? Oh, I know. This month has been this past month, July specifically, has been a crazy month. I went from kind of a focused attempt at being more active in my workflow, to having, very irregular energy spikes. I think it was reintroducing caffeine into my routine at a more consistent level. But either way, I spent the first half of the month, stuff still gets done. It would literally, I would have to I don't know. Even if I was I don't think I'd want to work. I don't need to work that hard. This is partly why I'm reflecting on this past month, because it's been a very strange journey of getting things done and also feeling like I've been the laziest person. The first half of the month. The second half of the month, for those of you who don't yet follow me on socials, actually, I might not have even said it on any of my musician pages. Maybe I referenced it on Instagram, but on my personal Facebook page, I mentioned that I went to the hospital. I went to St. Mary's downtown. My dad picked me up after I texted my parents, and I was like, "I'm feeling a lot of pain, and it hurts, and it's in the same area where I had a kidney stone scare last year, and I thought it went away, or I thought it broke down, but I guess not. So I went to the ER, I guess urgent care, which, you think of an emergency room, you think of like, trauma centers in like like on a crime show, and it's like, there's gurneys with people just bleeding everywhere. It's like, this guy's been shot. He's blah, blah. Like everyone's just running around, and it's crazy. But it was very quiet, very, very quiet. I thought the check-in process was funny because, first there was a security guard, very helpful, saw me literally leaning against something in pain and got me a wheelchair. And I was like, okay. And then I went up to the checkout or the check-in person, and she was like, name and birthday, and what are you here for? And I'm like, okay, I've got pain. I've been vomiting. It's a lot of pain, and it's in my lower left back. And my birthday, and I gave all the details. If you've been to a hospital, obviously you know all these things. This is just my first time ever being in a hospital like this. I've been in a hospital, to play music or to visit someone or to those type of things, but I've never been I've never been there as a patient. So after the first check-in lady, they wheel me into another room. There's another lady who's there to take my blood pressure and take some vitals, and she's like, oh, 158 over what, 80, I don't know, 70, I forget the lower number, but high blood pressure. And she was like, do you have a history of high blood pressure in your family? And I'm like, nah, it's the searing pain I'm in. It's the very real pain that I'm in. It's probably elevated my blood pressure, my heart rate. And then they're like, okay, well, we'll wheel you into this waiting room for a sec and give us a urine sample. I could barely get like up to the first line in the little cup. And while I was in the bathroom, with great effort, I got as much, into the cup as I could, and then I just immediately threw up again. So in my head, I'm just like, well, my body, something is obstructing something, and my body's just trying to get rid of anything that isn't helping it. So I then get wheeled into another room where it's like a little kind of not screened off, but like, there's a sliding glass door partition and a curtain. So, there's at least a little bit of privacy, and then there's this little cot with sheets. And I, proceed to spend the next 3.5 hours just in pain. They got an IV in my, my left arm, because I this is my dominant hand. So I'm like, if you're going to mess up one hand, this is one that I can make do. Not that I want to only play with one hand. I want both my hands, but if one, sorry left hand, you're not as important as this. This is the one that is more dexterous. This one is the support and color, and I can also, like all these rolls, I need two-hand coordination. All those types of things. And I spent the next 3.5 hours at the hospital just in pain. Slowly, my body's just trying to, like, I think it was just trying to pass the stone or something. But I just, slowly just peeing the bed and my clothes. And it was, partially involuntary. And I was just like sitting there like, is there any relief? And then, nice nurses, but very busy. Obviously, there's still a pandemic. There's still, there's people literally, like one nurse, she left and came back. She forgot my warm blanket, but it's fine. I won't hold it against her because someone else brought me a warm blanket. They were like, yeah, we have warm blankets. And I'm like, cool. Can this all be free? That'd be the warmest blanket. But she left and came back and she was like, oh, someone down the hall was going critical. And I was like, cool. Great. Glad they're still alive. Way more important than me, but still in pain. Would like something. Wink, wink. Wink, wink. All the drugs you normally prescribe for these types of pains. And it was about another hour, I think, until I had my scan. I had a CT scan, and they were like, "Yup, it's a stone." I'm like, "Cool." Could have told you that. But thanks for checking. And then, another person. This is like the fourth person. Like a physician's assistant comes in. The same thing. Like name, birthday, what's happening, where's the pain. I'm like, well, let me tell you something. The pain is immense. Can I please have help? And then eventually they get a little cocktail of painkillers and anti-nausea meds, and then they prescribe similar things. And the last 2 weeks, it's been, well, I guess 3 weeks at this point. It's been a game of drink all of the fluids that are supposed to help pass a stone. Hopefully it breaks down enough where I can pass it, but also knowing it's going to be extremely painful when it does happen. So every time you go to the bathroom, you're like, is it this time? Are we doing it? Is this happening? And then, okay, so I, got the pain meds at the hospital. My dad had ran home to, I think, they have pets, so you got to feed the pets, take care of the pets. And then he came right back and picked me up and took me home. The pain took a little over a week before it was like really, really gone. Like more, like there's still a feeling like in that same area where it's like, it's like I pulled a muscle and it's not fully unpulling, I guess. So it's, there's still some tension. There's still some residual pain. And I still need to pass the stone. So, hey, what is life without a little stones for your bones? But in doing, I canceled 4 gigs. I had 1 gig last weekend. I have a couple this week. Just because, now that the pain's more manageable, I can do things, but it's also like at any moment I could just be passing the stone. Like right now, as I'm recording things, I especially off the cuff, trying not to think about it is interesting. But in this time, I've had some, moments to reflect on my overall health, and wellness. I've talked about it. I feel like a little bit. Again, so all these episodes are off the cuff, so sometimes I'm like, did I already talk about that? I feel like I have, but maybe not. So far I've lost almost 40 pounds since March, and I still have, I'm in the 260s now, so I still have, probably 50 more pounds to lose, and then you start thinking about like, muscle and fitness and all that, along with the diet change. I want to have the energy and stamina to do the work that needs to be done in the next decade. Getting more financially stable, really growing Earth Radio as a band, growing my own platforms as a person, trying to navigate the volatile life of a freelance creative. The rug can get pulled out from underneath you by, a global pandemic, like something so out of your control that there's just really like when everything was shutting down, I'm like, part of me was like, oh good, I just get a break. But then, after a month of just being in your house, you're like, oh, I need to do something. And, I added to my workload during last year because work's always been a constant in my life. A lot of the people I respect are very hardworking people, but also very friendly. Like they aren't working hard and then also working to exclude or working to hate. Because like last week's episode, I was frustrated, but I hope you could tell it was all in comedic fun because it's something that just you hear it for 10 years. You hear the same types of stories, and I happen to have a podcast where I could just be like, another thing. But I'm thinking about the long term, because part of it too is like, if you want to go down the route of like body positivity, that's always been an interesting relationship for me because a lot of the media perceptions of friendships, intimate relationships, all these things, you start to feel like there has to be some sort of performative level, and I'm a pretty transparent person. Um, if something comes up in a subject and I feel comfortable sharing it and someone feels comfortable receiving that information, I don't mind doing it because it helps further a dialogue instead of just dancing around, the subject, or, or making something that's totally off topic part of the discussion. Um, you know, I tried to be an authentic person in a world that's very hard, like in a world that's still hard to be authentic. Like you might see, like I think of like Snapchat. Like if you stumble into Snapchat, the discover page is like, like this person's got a rare disease where their hands are their mouth and they live a life just like you and me. And it's like, it's like the TLC branded reality show clips. It's just like, yeah, I was born with hand mouth disease. Everything's normal. It's just that my lips are hands. and it's tricky to wear masks. It's a different way of breathing, but I have two extra sets of hands that are actually fully articulate. And that's cool. I don't mind that. That's a celebration of like, hey, make it work. Do whatever you need to do to, I often reference Jason Becker. He's a dude that got ALS in the prime of his life, at a career high point, like playing with, David Lee Roth in the 80s. Like that's when he wasn't just like hitting on Vegas moms on stage, in a leather jacket and be like, ah! And like not hitting those notes anymore, but still trying to have that charisma. You can do it, Dave. We all believe in you, Dave. The, I'm not saying like where I'm going with this is body positivity is a nuanced discussion, and for me, I was using it as a mask in a way. I was using it as kind of an excuse, because anything can be used as an excuse. Anything can turn toxic depending on how much or little you give towards that thing. If you have a slice of cake, that's good. You eat a whole cake. Don't do that every day. Probably ever. You probably get sick, or your blood sugar is going to spike, and it might cause some issues if something with insulin in your body. You could develop a diabetic condition. And for me, body positivity was like defeating that little part of my high school brain that was still like, no, don't go to the beach. You're gonna have to take your shirt off. Everyone's gonna point and laugh at you. Which it's never happened ever, because I go with friends. I don't just like show up and be like, hey, ladies, and try and be a creep, or like, I don't know, surround myself with people who are self-deprecating, or not self-deprecating, people who are critical of appearances, I guess, in that way. most of the people that I surround myself with are positive and affirming, and they want me to live my best life and best self. Um, and I did that for, most of my 20s. I just like, oh, just eat whatever I want, drink whatever I want. Weight would fluctuate. I would lose and gain the same 30 pounds. And then I just kept putting on weight, especially last year, just being at home. And now I'm at the point where I'm on the reversal. And I realized that it took getting to that point where I could be like, all right, I'm just over, at the time I was just over 300 pounds. And I could go to the beach and not feel like, oh, everyone's looking at me. It was just like, nope, this is just my body, and this is my vehicle. I happen to look this way. Other people look other ways. Everyone has something about themselves that they like and that they don't like. And I just, it's those simple little mantras that sometimes they put in media, but it's really like I lived through that, and it was always an undercurrent of like, it wasn't me going like, oh, these photos, I look so ugly and terrible. It was just, reminding myself like, oh yeah, like this is, it's good that I feel comfortable, but if I get too comfortable, it becomes dangerous. And it reminded me too of what I like about certain creatives, that they don't get too comfortable. There's always something that's sparking new art, a new change in perception, something that informs a life decision. And for me, it was like, all right, things are opening up again. I need to be able to fit normally in cars again. I need to be able to fit in furniture again. I was running out of furniture. They make furniture for bigger people, but it's also more expensive. And I don't have, like, if I was middle management at like, I don't know, mattress company, and I was the mattress man, and I made hand over fist selling mattresses across the land, and I could support that lifestyle and bank a bunch of money for healthcare, I'd probably be like half of the the folks that I see that are just doing their desk jobs. They like, they got the big gulp full of Coke, and they they go to a bunch of weddings, and they go out in the town, and they eat out a lot, and they party, and it's usually, it's a lot of the partiers that life catches up with them in that regard. And I could have ended up that way. I could have been that person that's just like, well, I've made my place, and I'm just gonna, this is what it is. And with these pivotal decisions in my life, I often delight in entertaining the multiverse theory. Because I grew up watching superheroes, and I didn't collect comics, but I watched all those comic book heroes animated, and all the shows, and the vivid imaginations. Fairly Odd Parents. Oh, I want fairy. If I had a fairy godparent, I'd wish for a gold Bentley. Like, I don't know. I can't afford a gold Bentley. I'd wish for like debt to just be, I'd hopefully have more altruistic wishes than just like me if I had fairly godparents. Fairy they're Fairly Odd Parents, fairy godparents. So with the pivotal decision of like, all right, I'm going to make a positive trend towards reclaiming my health, because I grew up playing 2 sports. I biked everywhere. I still played video games, and I would spend time, indoors in the basement or watching movies or TV or whatever, kids and friends and stuff. But I was always running around playing different sports, and being active. And now that I don't really do that, because I don't want to risk, really it's just I don't want to risk injury that could take me out of a performance, because that's my income. And now that I'm at this point where I made this decision, the multiverse theory kicks in. It's like, there is a Dutcher that didn't make this decision, and 10 years down the road, maybe they had a heart attack and died. It happens. People who get unhealthy enough, they don't live as long. That's what happens. You can be healthy and strong at, various sizes. I don't deny that. You can be unhealthy as a stick. You could be healthier as a, like a bigger dude with more muscle or a larger build, and it's it's all nuanced. Um, but for me, I was needing to have a more mobile body. So I've been walking more. I've been updating my diet, especially with, going to the hospital for this, what is now, I think, a bladder stone. It's got me thinking of like, all right, how am I hydrating? What am I putting into my system? What things will help? What things I don't need right now? Like, I'm not drinking caffeine. I'm not drinking pop. I'm not, eating a lot of sweets or desserts, like maybe a cookie here and there. um, so, reflecting on all those things, it all comes together to basically make this decision of like, I just need to be healthier for me, for the people that I work with, the people I surround myself with, because in the music business, the healthiest thing to do is to take care of yourself. And it took me, thinking of my adult life, it took me over 10 years to finally be like, you know what? I'm not a road dog. I'm not going to slam 5 beers and then go do something. I'm not going to drink on a bunch on stage. I'm not going to, take a bunch of psychedelics and try and play a set. I'm not going to, like, I don't want things to affect my ability to perform as an artist. I know so many people who depended on substances to get them through college, through gigs. Like, that's like, people, I just need a little drink before I go on stage. Why? Why do you need a little drink? Why? Are you not confident and comfortable in what you do? Is it just part of a routine? That's an addiction then. Like, if you have to preface anything by saying I need a drink first, do you not know how to manage your own emotions? Like, do you need to take a step back and like realize that? Because that my mentality with food was like, it's a reward, it's coping, it's a de-stressor, it's for pleasure, it's, like, oh, I can't wait, I'm gonna order a bunch of wings, I'm gonna have some wings, today's wing night, like, get hype. I still want to do that. I still want to be that person that's like, no, we'll just have a few slices of pizza, like, why not? Let's go out for a burger, like, who cares? But all the other times that aren't social eating or special event eating or all that stuff, I want to be able to fuel the engine that is my, creativity, my ability to work, my ability to network, my ability to hang out with people, to do these, types of content, do these types of things. So I've been very reflective in the last few weeks, and it's really been a great metric to show, this time's really been a good opportunity for reflection. Last year, there were some reflections on career and like, but most of it was just thinking about survival. Like, what, is the unemployment coming in? Can I get some work doing, what work can I get done remotely? How can I improve my streams? What, all these things, starting a Patreon, really trying to get into the nuggets of how to make it in this business. Cause in a world, like, think about this. What job, like, this doesn't happen if you're an aerospace engineer, let's say, or maybe very rarely. You're working another job and then you make something that catapults you into the spotlight. like Mark Rebier, for example. I think he was a telemarketer. And then he just started doing these goofy gigs. He had some training, so he knew how to do music. And he would do these goofy gigs where he would just improvise the whole time and make it into a spectacle and then invite people into the spectacle. And then, unfiltered, unchained is his mind. He's grooving and moving and getting people hype. He's totally just this dude who there is an artistic drive that pushed him and catapulted him into the spotlight. Most jobs don't do that. And then with music, it's like you have those kind of stories, and then you have stories like was it Charles Bradley, I think his name was. He didn't get any sort of fame or recognition until his 60s. He spent years as a James Brown impersonator, and then in his 60s is when the band came together, the album came together, the style came together, the media came together, and he just spent the last few years of his life in this spotlight, living this life that so many musicians see, little glimpses of, playing on stage with a pop artist as a producer, and you see the backstage and all, you hear the click track and the cue in the audio feed, and that someday, like, I'm just going to get the same gear that person had, and I'm going to do the same thing. You find one that motivates you. And then there are a lot of people who they're perfectly content playing a couple times a week, or a couple times a month. There are people who are in the industry that work and grind like crazy, and they see the success from that, or they don't, and they realize they've put all, maybe they met the wrong person, or they didn't put enough time into one aspect of their craft, and it burned them in the end. And it's such a dynamic industry that if I need some constant, and the constant I want is in my being. The constant I want is how I'm feeling internally and what I'm expressing externally. Whether it's goofy rants or musical moments, or transcendent moments of moving beyond the self into the collective, the collective expressions of a crowd, or the people, in the area, having those moments that are great. And I want to have the energy to push through all the dumb stuff that comes with the music industry too. So there's improvement happening. There's a lot to be said about taking care of yourself, and really taking care of yourself, not just, not the self-care Saturday that's just like order a pizza, drink a whole bottle of wine, kill your neighbor. Self-care. But really taking stock in like what makes me feel good, that's real, that's like tangible, what's going to fuel me and not hinder me, what's going to help me help others, that type of thinking. So thanks for listening. If you liked anything I talked about today, you can go support. Where can you support? DutcherSnedeker.com. You can go to patreon.com/DutcherSnedeker. You can go to all the affiliated links stuff, trying to have everything updated, like I mentioned in the last week's episode. I'm trying to get stuff updated, trying to get back in the saddle, more in the saddle. Even though I don't think I've ever stopped being on the saddle. I need to get a new saddle. But I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen, and we'll see you next time in the Dutch Snedeker podcast. Turning down the radio, the rabbit looked at his wife and said, "Honey, wasn't that a beautiful episode?" And she said, "Why, yes. I didn't know he wasn't going to shout at me about something in the music industry. I'm just a rabbit." And the rabbit said, the other one, the one I talked about earlier, the male rabbit, he said, "Well, you better like and comment and subscribe, or this marriage is over." Yeah, I mean it.